It's me, Mark. It's just me.
Just sit tight till I call on you. Hope the hell I don't have.
Oh, come on! Robot.
The hits just keep on coming. Hello, anybody home?
What the? Rejoin the team at Guardians HQ.
I'm in.
Oh my god. It's okay.
Off saving lives, or stopping some bad guys.
They can be a part of something bigger. Or die. Think, Mark.
Welcome back to the Chilltrumites podcast, the podcast that won't send you to Mars with a bag lunch. I'm Matt, and I'm here to talk about Invincible. I'm joined as always by Bashar. How's it going, Bash?
Hey Matt, it's pretty good. I'm just really excited for the fourth episode of Invincible. I was so happy, to see it, and I just can't wait for next week's episode because there's been a lot of teases on Skybound.
Oh yeah, we went to Mars this week. It was a big deal, and things are only going to get bigger from here. Mars won't be the furthest we go from Earth in this show, and it was a nice little trip for old Mark Grayson, I think.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. And one of the things I love about this show is I love the fact that Otley's artwork really seems to be so effective even in space. A lot of artists, I feel like when they're conveying space or drawing space, I feel like there's a lot of, negative space, haha, pun intended, but it sucks up a lot of the comic panel, and it feels like it just seems like a lot of sameness. But with Invincible, it really translates well. It's gorgeous. It really feels surreal.
You're right. You're 100%, because I feel like the vastness of space is definitely translated well in the book, and especially on the screen. You feel it. You feel like they're in space and that you're isolated and alone, which is exactly the vibes you're supposed to get from outer space scenes. So I think it went really well.
The thing is, Invincible is a show that, as Matt said, it's going to have a lot of off-world events. And I hope that's not a spoiler, but I feel like it's pretty obvious. Our heroes here are very powerful. They can fly. If it hasn't already been some sort of foreshadowing, we've seen that a lot of the threats we're facing right now on Earth that Omni-Man and Invincible seem to be preventing are threats that come from outer space, from alternate planes, from different dimensions. So if you guys are seeing the pattern here, there's definitely some extraterrestrial threats.
And it's not E.T. phoning home. It's some other creature coming to beat the shit out of home. And it's going to be it's going to be wild. I cannot wait. And there's a character coming next week that I've been waiting for ever since I saw him appear on the page. Yeah, there's going to be no shortage of space threats. You definitely didn't spoil anything, because we've already got an Alan, we've got interdimensional beings, and we've got Martians, and we've got, there's going to be full spoilers in this about the episode in this podcast, but we've got the Sequids here, and it's fantastic. It's a face hug good time on Invincible.
And that's one of the things that I remember, telling Matt when I was recommending this series, was that it takes a lot of familiar elements from pop culture and it really effectively reintroduces it, or does, Kirkman introduces his own spin on it, and it's very effective. It gives you a sense of familiarity while also providing you something fresh and new. And that's what I love about the Sequids. There's just enough familiarity there, so you're like, oh, I remember that from Baby Xenomorphs. But then it's you keep watching the episode and you're like, wait a minute, these xenomorphs don't fuck with us. They don't joke. They wanna they're very deadly, and they're deadly even with the smallest, you know what I mean? So there's that sense of, watching Alien or Aliens, that one little baby xenomorph facehugger can, infect an entire species or a whole space crew. Here you've got the same thing. You've got a Sequid who manages to, find its way onto the space crew, but it's still a threat that's very real. It's a very scary threat because they could potentially take over Earth.
I think that they nailed the description of what makes them such a threat. I love them. It's like you have a little bit of Starro in there, some, a little dash of symbiote, and of course the facehugger comparison. It's a really cool threat, and I love how these are basically just maybe the last of their species we don't know, and they're stuck on Mars with the one species that can counteract them with the ability to shapeshift, which stops them from being able to gain control of the Martians. And I think that's a really smart play by Kirkman, and it works really well when you see that the Sequids are returned to power at the end of the episode.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that when I first read Invincible, I remember seeing the Sequids and thinking, this is a little bit funny. What's going on here? This seems kind of silly. But please don't jump to any conclusions, because I promise the Sequids have such a like it's such a satisfying story. They're very cool. There's gonna be a lot more, and let's just say this: you haven't seen their final form.
We're getting Dragon Ball Z up in here, and there's no Frieza, but it's not their final form. There's a lot of like luring someone into a false sense of security. Kirkman does it with the readers, like it's a nice family life, and then you see that Omni-Man's up to no good with killing the Guardians of the Globe. There's a lot of that. Of you feel you're safe, but you're actually more screwed than ever.
Yep, and that's the thing is that Invincible has a very it's one of those stories that honestly I loved so many of the Rogues Gallery that you're gonna see in this series. Like they're all very different. That's something I gotta praise Kirkman for. One thing we often I felt like limited to in the space and confinements of Walking Dead was that we're dealing with a largely human story, and that's what's at the center of everything. Is that we're in a post-apocalyptic world, we got zombies, but at the center of it all is human beings and their humanity and how that diminishes or how it prevails, and that's really what ruled Walking Dead. But here we've got so much more than that, and that's why I think Invincible is really wonderful. We've got humanity, we've got outer space, we've got science fiction, and we've got villains that really, they don't just blur the lines between black and white. They really add a different element beyond just humanity to them because they're so different than anything we've seen, yet very familiar, and they all have reasons. You're gonna, one person can look at it from the perspective of this is a classic hero fights villain, but another person puts themselves in the shoes of the Sequids, for example, and they're just a species trying to do what their species does. So it's a very interesting science fiction dynamic here. And I feel like these are the beginnings of the slow shift of tone from, conventional superhero drama to like a slow buildup of science fiction.
Yeah, if you really want to get into it, what separates us from the Sequids? Just like a body and a pleasing form. Because they do the same. They take over and they destroy. So who's really the good guy here? It's shades of gray all over, and I love it.
That's why I'm such a big fan of Invincible, is because you have such compelling heroes who are so much like the villains in the sense that they're not necessarily bad people, but they just have their own narrative, and it's once you go down the path of their narrative, you begin to see things a different way.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into the episode proper. We have episode 4, Neil Armstrong, Eat Your Heart Out. I like it. Really cheeky title so far, really enjoyable. And we open up in Egypt where a man named Bryant is unearthing an ancient Egyptian structure. It looks like they're in Egypt, I assume.
Yeah, it's Egypt, I think. But one thing I got to clarify, and because I remember a lot of the issues in the comics. I obviously don't remember every single thing because I read it so fast. But I don't think that's actually in the comics, is it?
I don't think so either. It's kind of a unique thing. And so we're free to, we don't know anything. We're not spoiling anything. This is pure speculation. So when that mummy gets the slab dropped on him, he could show up again or he could be gone forever. It could just be a one-note joke about, this big thing this big threat we're building up just got stomped by, a big stone. He got
100%. Yeah.
Seth Rogen wasn't even here this week.
That's true, and that's the thing is that that's another thing that has me so excited for this show is that knowing that Kirkman is as we said in the first episode of this podcast, he's introducing a different spin to the timeline and the way certain elements of the story are going to be revealed, and that has me and Matt excited because this series is one that's heavily built on reveals and twists and turns, and it's very hard to tell someone beyond when I was, for example, trying to get my friends to read the series, it's very hard to go into what makes it so special without talking about some of the twists. Mm-hmm. But for us, we already know the twist because we've read the whole story, but this is a good way to keep us interested because we've never seen this, and I'm assuming they're going to do this more and more, and that has me intrigued to see how they're going to deviate from the actual material itself.
Yeah, I love the idea of the genius of Kirkman. He has 10 years to stew on this and how can I improve what I did? What can I introduce faster? I kind of touched on that a bit last week, and I love it where he's going to improve upon his own work, and it's been shown so far, and I'm excited for it.
That's the thing that I'm really excited for as well. I'm really keen on seeing how Kirkman wants to modernize some of these, like what he would consider outdated elements or just elements that could use some refinement.
Yeah, it was cool to see Bryant there with his little scarab hand tattoo. Must have been some good ink because, palm tattoos fade away quickly, whether they're, done with needles or not. And he raises Kahor, presumably from the dead. And, yeah, he instantly dies. It was a nice little opening to the episode of, you thought this was a threat. thought it might be a remix of another villain that we might be getting next week, but no, he's dead already, and that's it. We're gone. It's just kind of a scene to introduce us to see Omni-Man and Mark flying over Egypt and their little escapades there.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because I believe a few of these episodes have begun with some very random scenes that seemingly have nothing to do with the story, but I'm sure knowing the genius of Kirkman, there's a way that these are all going to be interwoven with the grand narrative, or perhaps even in a manner that, they're foreshadowing certain elements of the story that are yet to come.
And already there's a very global feel to it, right? We've got Egypt, we've been to Italy this episode, they've gone to London or the UK or whatever. So there's already a global feel, and like we mentioned earlier, intergalactic threats, you feel like the Earth is this big living being. It's not just, oh, this is how it's affecting the US. It's all over, dealing with aliens, dragons, whatever, and you might have to bond together to deal with intergalactic threats later on.
Yeah, that's some of the charm I feel like that Kirkman brings to this series. This is what I mean when I say it's so intelligently crafted. I mean, beyond the fresh, and I know I say that a lot because, it's fresh. Beyond the fresh approach.
Not just on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, exactly. It's certified fresh everywhere. But no, beyond the new and fresh approach to the series itself, where you see a lot of characters that immediately feel memorable. And this is something I read in a review somewhere. I don't remember where, so I apologize. But I remember a reviewer saying that something about Invincible, I believe it was the Games Radar review, where the reviewer said that something about Invincible feels like where, whenever you look at a character on the page of the book or on screen, you instantly remember that character because they all stick out from one another. None of them blend in. They all seem so different and unique. That's what I love. But at the same time, it's such an intelligently crafted story to where there's going to be a lot of explanations, and they're not going to leave you hanging like comics where they assume, continuity or they assume certain elements. No, they're going to explain things because, for example, we look at the first few episodes and we see Omni-Man trying to sway Debbie by saying, like, let's go to Italy and have lunch there. You know what I mean? Or let's go do the bratwurst. I think in the first episode they were going to get bratwurst in Germany or something. So it already shows you that these heroes are already going around. And I remember there's another scene in one of the older episodes where Omni-Man is racing Invincible home from Mount Everest, saying that the last one home has to do the dishes. So they're already giving you a worldly feel, and I love that.
It's a nice touch, and that's what I would do with superpowers. I'd be bringing home pizza with the cheese still bubbling from Naples or whatever. Like, that's definitely what I'd be doing if I had powers. But it's nice. You think of all the benefits. It gives you another look at it. Like, hey, look, you can have whatever international cuisine you want, right where it's made best. It's nice. It shows like the life they're living, where the superhero thing is just norm, and it's really been integrated into the Grayson's life since Mark's birth, and for the last 20 years for Debbie, where she's been living on a different plane of existence than the other humans.
Yeah, and I always felt like that was realistic. People in real life like us, we often, when we're fantasizing about being superheroes or when we're watching these movies where we're seeing the superheroes in front of our eyes, we often ask ourselves, is that realistic? I feel like that's why something like The Boys resonated so well. It's because people are often very complicated. Human beings are complicated, and they're not always going to be like Superman, like a Boy Scout, or like Wonder Woman, like an Amazon goddess. No, they're going to make mistakes, or they're going to take advantage of certain things. And I like the fact that Kirkman here shows us that, yes, these are responsible superheroes. Yes, they rescue the world, but that doesn't mean they don't take advantage of having superpowers.
Exactly, and they use it for fun stuff, for pleasure, as
for
we saw with
human
Rex.
Convenience. Yeah, like who wouldn't? That's the thing. If you were a human being and you had superpowers, let's be honest, you would 100% use it for convenience, especially if it didn't bother anyone. So it's like Kirkman's just showing you. I feel like these touches where he shows Omni-Man saying let's go here, or like Grayson saying or Mark saying let's do this. I feel like he's just showing you human elements. You know what I mean? It
grounds you in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we get that nice, the aforementioned Omni-Man and Invincible flying montage to a song I loved, Sunflower by Vampire Weekend. The soundtrack is maybe the MVP of the season so far. It's been great.
Oh, yeah. Amazing soundtrack. Awesome scenes. That we get the scene I mentioned earlier after the Mummy where you just cut to Mark and his dad. They're just, training, flying around the Earth. They race home from Mount Everest. And then the opening scene begins, and I've noticed it's getting just a little bit bloodier each time.
Someone made an edit on Twitter of it was instead of the blood, it was Debbie's like red wine spilled, which is like a really nice touch.
That's actually a really nice touch. Yeah,
Yeah, to the point that I before I saw the episode, I saw it and I was like, man, did they do that in the episode? It's smart, and I hope they actually do that and credit that Twitter user, but that like I failed to do here, but I think it would be cool. And which is cool when Omni-Man and Mark are flying, you get to see Omni-Man says that you got to push yourself to build speed, and Mark's like, oh, I still have to hit the gym even though I have powers, which is a nice reference of like you have to keep pushing yourself, but you'll continue to get stronger if you continue to exert yourself.
I feel like that scene right there was very revealing in terms of what, it's kind of giving you insights into what Omni-Man's life was like on Viltrum, how he was raised, what his priorities are, and how he can shift those priorities to Mark, how he's going to train him, in what respect and what regard. And yeah, it's interesting to see him push Mark so much so early. But yeah, you get the classic teenage response from Mark, like, I really still got to do this,
Yeah, and when they get to Everest, I love this. One of my favorite moments, the hiker climbs to the top and is shocked at the sight of them. I was like, oh, what the fuck? Like,
we all do that with Gary, yeah. See, I love that. See, like, you watch other superhero things, and you could always do that. Marvel movies, DC movies, they could do things like that. And it's very human. It feels like a very natural thing that could happen, but they never do. And I love that Kirkman does that. He's a genius, like... In the first episode of the series, you get Mark opening the garbage, and how many people have opened the garbage and had them had the door shut on your face? Like that's just a very realistic thing, and I love when he does those little touches.
Not only is it funny, but it just shows how the difference between the superpowered Chilltrumites and this human this is probably his best accomplishment he's ever had is climbing the top of Mount Everest, and these guys just do it on a day when Omni-Man's just training his son on his second month of being a superhero, and they're just already at the top of the mountain. It shows how high above they are compared to the humans and what they're going to do with that.
Oh yeah, there's that, of course. There's that fantastic element that I hadn't considered. That's a very good take on it. And there's just also, of course, the comedic take. Like, can you imagine, you're climbing Everest, you're about to do, something that, yeah, a few people have done it, but not many people have done this. You're doing something that is a lifetime accomplishment. You're about to, descend onto to the peak, and you just see this superhero being just standing there. Like, I can't imagine the emotions, you know what I mean?
While they're on Everest, Omni-Man gives a bit of backstory on Viltrum, and he talks about losing his parents and that Earth was like a new beginning to him, and that Debbie changed everything for him, and Mark continued that change once he was born.
Keen viewers are going to notice that Omni-Man is choosing his words very carefully here, because, he's trying to be very cautious about what he tells Mark about his past.
It's almost like their relationship, we see how, he's a very stern guy, Omni-Man. It's almost like, in certain ways, Debbie is keeping him in check, like Homelander and I forget her name there from Karate Kid. When you have these superpowered beings, you have to worry what happens if there's a heartbreak for Superman. Like, they tease that in a lot of Superman comics and even in Justice League. Like, what happens if this omnipotent being loses the one they love or something like that? How do you keep that in check? Because, if some of us are brokenhearted, we might do stupid stuff. But if we're, incredibly powerful, who knows what the damage could be?
I definitely agree. I mean, in Justice League Snyder Cut, it's largely based on, or at least it's largely, foreshadowing a future that is based on a comic book called Injustice. And the premise of Injustice largely stems from one event where basically the Joker kidnaps Lois Lane, does this typical Joker stuff, but he ends up killing Lois while she was pregnant with Clark's child. And afterwards, Clark Kent just loses his mind and becomes a tyrant and just takes over the world. And the story is largely, trying to say that, while Superman is very aware of his status as a Kryptonian, as a figure, a godlike figure, a figure above humans, what's tethered him so much to mankind was his love for Lois Lane and his love for his parents. But, they've died of natural causes. Once he loses that tether to humanity, he loses all connection to Earth and goes crazy. And in a lot of ways, I feel like Invincible is trying to say similar things here. They're trying to show you that Debbie and Mark are really Omni-Man's tether to humanity here. They're what ground him and what keep him, sane.
We've seen what he's capable of, and who knows what he'd be capable of if he didn't have two humans that he loved unconditionally.
Yeah, like it's clear that You know, in the conversations he's had in previous episodes, he doesn't have a very strong connection to human beings in particular, but he has a very strong connection to Debbie and Mark. And even like when he loses his fellow Guardians of the Globe, you could see I understand he committed those murders, but at the same time, you have to ask yourself, these are people he worked with. These are people, you know, like any normal human being who would spend a large amount of time with people like that who share similar morals, they would grow to, you know, respect them at least. But as you saw, he just destroyed them. So you have to ask, where are his priorities and how necessary and important are his family to him?
Not to mention his moral compass was forged millions of light years away with who knows what kind of people and what kind of upbringing that's different than Earth. So, you know, the Viltrumites are helping people out, but clearly Omni-Man's a pretty stern, serious guy that takes no concern with murdering almost entire species. He sent the Flaxans back, you know, thousands of years probably with that destruction.
You guys saw right before he zapped back, he literally just dropped an entire like boulder the last few. Like, this guy's brutal.
Yeah, it was awesome. So the two race home and we see Omni-Man, you know, he breaks the sound barrier or whatever. He does like a sonic boom. I'm not super sciencey, but yeah, that he goes super fast. And he was talking about later when they get home that he was teaching Mark how to fly at sonic speeds, hopefully land afterwards. Otherwise, he's dead.
They train, they joke about getting home, they get home, and, you know, we cut to the intro, and right after the intro, we notice, I believe, Olga talking to Debbie on the couch about, you know, suspicions aroused regarding what's happened, and, you know, how Olga just says this interesting remark that I thought was really powerful in particular, because you wouldn't ever hear this in something like DC or Marvel movies where heroes are so black and white. But here in a morally like gray area, you know, she tells Debbie, of course, you know, Red Rush lied to me. You know, that's what they do. Superheroes, they lie to us. That is the motivation that gets Debbie to look into what Damien Darkblood told her last episode.
Yeah, you can see it's like looking into, you know, a black mirror, seeing like this could be my future if a couple things went differently. Debbie realizes this. We saw that when she mentioned Red Rush, like, oh, what if you died like Red Rush or whatever. He's like, oh, you know, and Omni-Man just brushed it off like, oh yeah, Speedster is a stupid power anyway. So you can see how this really affects her, and she's thinking she never thought that I could lose Omni-Man or something could happen. She feels invincible, you know, pun intended. But now there's some cracks in the armor, and she's realizing that something bad could happen. And even with, like you mentioned, what Damien Darkblood told her, now the suspicion and the fear, and that's a volatile cocktail.
You know, we see her in the following scene pulling up her computer and beginning to Google Damien Darkblood and looking up things about him. And, you know, with each different image she sees of Darkblood, she becomes more and more interested in what's happening and more, you know, curious. And we see that right as, for example, she hears the heroes coming home, Omni-Man and Mark, she quickly pivots and, you know, just puts everything away and acts as if she was not researching that because she doesn't want to get caught.
There's lots of that in the Grayson household. There's lots of like shuffling around even later in this episode to make sure that you know, everything's the status quo when you open the door, and you don't get to see, you know, a sibling being being produced at that point. When she's looking at her computer screen and doing the research, you can see when she's looking at her real estate page that there's a lot of Easter eggs there. There's Coreyberry Drive and Walker Street below. I'm not exactly sure if it's like Drive or Street or whatever, but yeah, definitely a Cory Walker reference, which is a nice touch.
I was surprised by the following scene. I just, you know, one thing we've never seen, or at least I don't remember in the comic book, was Omni-Man drinking wine. Like, he straight up just takes a glass of Debbie's wine and just starts with the proper like etiquette and everything. Just starts gulping wine after a day of superhero. Like that kind of blew me away.
Yeah, now that you mention it, you don't see him drinking that often, but maybe he's just trying to do the facade. Like, everything's normal. Look, I'm just gonna have a glass of wine. Look how casual I am. You know, nothing's up.
Yeah, it was just jarring in the moment. But yeah, how did you feel about the following sequence after where Mark and Amber go on their date?
It was all right. I mean, it's nice they're going to the market. I'm glad it happened just so I can make balls jokes the entire episode with the crate that they found. So for that, I'm thankful. The episode is written by Ryan Ridley, who writes for Rick and Morty. So there's a lot of that humor in the episode, and he's also done Channel 101 stuff like Water and Power. He's done some hilarious, like, small indie stuff that I definitely recommend digging up. That Project 101 stuff. It's Dan Harmon's like weird, like it's almost like pre-YouTube kind of ideas, and It's like a film fest they do in California for pilots, and people vote on the silliest ideas. That website is what birthed Rick and Morty. That's the first appearance of Doc and Marty and House of Cosby's and a lot of screwed up stuff. A lot of weird humor that I feel like fits in perfectly with the Invincible universe, like the fuck kind of jokes when you see Omni-Man at Mount Everest.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll have to check that out myself. You know, I'm a big fan. The one thing I think, I don't know if we've mentioned this in prior episodes, but if we have, I apologize, but I'm going to bring it up again because I'm just so blown away by it, is I feel like the animation of Invincible is such a good mix between modern Walker/Otley artwork and like 90s DC/2000, early 2000 DC Young Justice League / Batman animated series. Like, it has such a good mix between the two. It feels like it has those elements, but it has a little bit of like modern elements to it too. It works very well for this format, in my opinion.
I was talking to AJ, my friend, about it, and he'll be on next week, I'm pretty sure. And he was saying that you can tell they save a lot of the budget until the action scenes. Like, there's not a lot of movement when they're talking and stuff, and it still looks good, but they do save it for the action. The action always looks intense as hell, whether it's the jaw-dropping end episode 1 or Omni-Man destroying entire civilization or the Martian aspect. So I'm appreciating the animation. I think the show is gorgeous, and I really hope that they pump up the budget a bit for next season because, I think that this property is really going to take off. It's Robert Kirkman. I've always been on Kirkman.
I agree. I feel like, my Facebook feed has just been full of people praising the show, people trying to get in touch with the comics, people trying to buy the graphic novels, the compendiums, just literally just people just talking about Invincible. And I've even seen, like, I'm in several comic book groups because I'm a collector, and I've seen just a lot of Invincible books take over. I've seen some very controversial issues that I'm not going to bring up yet because they do have spoilery content, but they've been taking off. So it seems like the market is responding well to Invincible, and social media is responding well to Invincible. So that's really good. It seems like a lot of people are getting their, they're being introduced to this property for the first time, and it seems to be so good for them that they even want to read the comics, and that's always a good thing to hear for us.
It's true. I love to see both. You were saying on Facebook, I've been on the Twitter account and our Instagram, and you see the community bloom, and it's really nice to see all this love and all the fun memes and stuff growing and following the show. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, me too. Like, people are like genuinely excited to be, reading Invincible, to be buying Invincible, to be watching Invincible, and that makes me happy. Like, I've seen people who just watch 2 episodes and they're just like, okay, I bought the compendiums, I'm gonna read it all. Just like, holy crap. Yeah.
It's nice to see the love grow. And like, I've only known this character for 2 months now, and it's hard to place him in the pantheon with my favorites of like Spider-Man, Batman, and stuff like that. But honestly, I think give it a year or two and he's up there. He climbs the charts. Invincible and the Rogues Gallery, like, they definitely made their mark on the industry.
He's up there for me. I've become enamored of the character. I've had to, buy everything pretty much I could find related, including the action figures, which I think are so cool. Like, for you people listening in America, you are so lucky. You can purchase these figures directly from Skybound, and this is not an advertisement. I'm just expressing my delight with these figures because I think they're wonderful. You can purchase these figures from Skybound, and the shipping is so cheap. But in Canada, it's a different story trying to get these figures from Skybound. But man, if you guys haven't seen these, look these figures up. They're just like Invincible action figures, and they have, quite a few characters. You got Adam Eve, Mark, Omni-Man. I'm not sure beyond that who, because I'm, they're just gonna preview the big ones. But they have the normal figures where it's just, them wearing their conventional costumes, and then they have blood splattered figures, like literally, like
you don't even have to get the ketchup.
Version.
Nice.
No, like, I just like, they have blood splattered versions of the figures, and that just blew my mind in the best way. So if you guys like the show and you want some cool action figures, go check out Skybound. It has some
really cool stuff.
Amazing stuff. Yeah, some really cool merch for Invincible, including sweaters, shirts, just mugs, some really cool mugs, like just a bunch of cool things. But those figures and the compendiums, they have the compendiums on print en masse. So you guys looking for to read it, it's all there. But man, those figures are awesome.
I'm impressed. A little pricey, especially with shipping in Canada. Like, it's $40 Canadian for the shirt without shipping. But I'm tempted. Usually like $30 is my limit for a shirt that I really like, but I might find myself with it more before.
Yeah, and it's weird because they don't combine shipping. So if you buy like say you want to buy 3 things in your order, they're gonna charge you shipping for each thing, which I hate. I really don't like that. But that's how it is. Yeah. But I'm assuming in America it's different, but in Canada that's how it is.
That is what it is. Cool stuff, but it comes at a price, but whatever. That's there's a demand for it for sure. So whatever they want to do.
Yeah, of course. Check your local comic shops first. You might find them there, but or any toy store locally. But yeah, be on the lookout if you guys want action figures. They have some awesome ones.
Who knows what's going to be at your LCS? I know even in Nova Scotia here, our local comic shop is just dripping in Invincible swag. They've got the cutout and Skybound. It looks like they're going all out and giving stores, pins and posters and stuff like that. So if you like it, hey, and you've never been to your LCS, give it a go.
Yeah, go check it out. I'm pretty sure, the LCS would appreciate, support local, and trust me, you won't regret reading Invincible.
No, for sure. It's one of the first series that I'm just like, boom, I'm reading this whole thing through, and it's contained, right? There's a few spin-offs and stuff like that, but you can really just dive into this world and read all the source material within a couple months.
Yeah, and you don't got to know anything. You don't have to read anything prior. This isn't like Marvel or DC where there's an entire 30, 40 years of continuity. You just pick up Compendium 1, Graphic Novel 1, and you're good.
Yeah, so Mark and Amber are having fun on their date. They admire some balls. Some are too pricey. $800, that's pricey. We've all been there on a date. We're like, oh, that's nice, but I can't go bankrupt for this. And then you go home with the rice separator. It's a story as old as time.
That rice separator thing honestly cracked me up. I was just like, of all the things you could grab, Mark, you grabbed the rice separator, of course. Like, come on, man. But yeah, no, it was a delightful little scene. I understand that, like you were saying, they're saving all the budget for the big action scenes. It definitely felt like that here. It just felt like some of the background characters were a bit, not
static.
Static, yeah, they weren't really moving. But overall, I can appreciate
and not the Virgil
that.
Hawkins kind.
It was a good little cute scene. You just see them trot along. They talk about their, little bit of life experiences or what they've done. And, typical teenage first date stuff. And then we cut to what I think is one of the coolest scenes of this episode. We cut to the exchange between Damian Darkblood and Omni-Man. Basically Nolan's confronting Damian because he's all pissed off, for instilling doubt into his wife and kid. Yeah,
the tables have turned. This time it's Damien that gets an uninvited guest, and I really love this scene where Omni-Man goes all out, like, who's gonna trust you? You're a demon, blah blah blah. You think the GDA is not gonna side with me, or this whole exchange was fantastic.
Yeah, I love how little shits like Darkblood gives. Like, nobody has the guts to stand up to like Omni-Man. But like David Darkblood just doesn't give a shit. Like
he's
just
been to
like,
hell and back multiple times. So Omni-Man, whatever.
Yeah, he's just like, I don't give a shit, dude. Like, you're a piece of cake. But yeah, they just have a little exchange. He tells Darkblood to stay away from his family, and I get one of my favorite lines, was it when he tells him to go fuck himself? Like,
go fuck yourself. Darkblood flies off.
That's a realistic. That's what I mean by realistic. Like, people, whether you're human or not, people have emotions. It's natural for someone to get pissed off. Like, it's very natural for something like that to happen. And I just thought that was a very realistic scene. Like, it was. This guy just, he threatened this other dude, and this dude just, told him to shove it up his ass, and it's very natural in a situation to just feel that way.
This life that you've built is in jeopardy, and this, demon literally from hell is trying to unravel the life that you've built, and
you can't really kill him because they'll know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so you need someone else with shades of gray on their mind to go and do it for you later in the episode. But I just love that was one of the highlights of the show so far. Just go fuck yourself flies off, and with like the J.K. Simmons voice. Oh, beautiful.
It was such a good scene. It was very satisfying, and it's something that you honestly just don't see that often.
No,
but yeah.
I'm going to teleport to your front door. This thing isn't exactly Swiss in its precision.
I almost killed you.
Yeah, I noticed.
And now, back to the show.
We go from go fuck yourself to go clone yourself as the remaining Mahler twin is at work. we get another Run the Jewels montage. I guess Run the Jewels is like the official. They provide basically the official soundtrack of the Muller twins, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of Run the Jewels for a while, so it's a great thing to see them in something more, mainstream, something like Invincible, where audiences can be introduced to them for the first time if they haven't heard of them.
We see that, it was foreshadowed before that one of the Muller twins is a clone, so that they must at least have access to cloning facilities, and we see the lone Muller twin set it up, and I like that he had to use like the drill bit or whatever to drill it and show his blood, showing just how strong the skin of the Muller twins.
Yeah, like he didn't just have to. This is a detail I noticed in the second watch around. Like he didn't just have to use the drill bit by like activating the spin. He had to literally grab the machine and puncture himself with it. Like he had to physically force it into his hand.
Yeah, it's nice where you can set up that he's, looks to be setting up a clone, and he's that strong, so you can show how strong someone is and show how smart someone is, and with, the lovely Run the Jewels to accompany it. So you get a lot done in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I think gym bros who watch this show are going to get a little bit of a kick out of the scene where he just puts like 20 or 30 different burger patties into the machine to create his clone. Just beef him up, literally.
Yeah, exactly. So that was cool, and we cut and we see that we get the viewpoint of Robot's HUD, and we can see that he was watching what's going on with the Muller twins. So he just didn't let the Muller twins go for free. He definitely wants them to do something for him.
Yeah, Zachary Quinto being Zachary Quinto as usual. But this is a nice little, insight into Robot's personality, and it'll be interesting to see how they keep on putting these clones out for viewers.
We get Rex being Rex, where he's annoying the hell out of everybody, and basically Robot does a Vulcan nerve pinch on his shoulder. It's the closest I've seen we could possibly get to it without being Vulcan nerve pinch, and he takes some blood from Rex, presumably to use in his experiment, as we saw later. So that's not cool. I'm sure Rex is not going to be cool about that, although I'm sure Rex is the kind of guy that would like having two of himself around.
It's going to be interesting to see how that plot develops, because I feel like a lot of people are going to be questioning Robot's motives. And until not too long ago, until the episode just before this one, the Robot hasn't given you any reason to question his motives.
He seems like cold and calculating, but he seems to be working as a force for good. Or at least to save the most amount of lives possible, even if he's considering nuclear options. But he doesn't seem to be a bad guy by any means, but he's definitely up to some shady stuff.
Yeah, viewers can begin to understand that his priorities lie more in like actual calculations and like odds and probabilities, as opposed to just what's practical. He cares much more about numbers and just saving, X amount of people.
Yeah, this whole sequence takes place at the Guardians of the Globe headquarters, and Cecil interrupts, as he's one to do, with his regular upbeat cheer, and Rex tells Cecil that he missed a spot during the cleanup. And then Cecil says that he left it there as a reminder, and that it'll be cleaned off when the new Guardians prove themselves worthy, and he says that the Guardians should stare at it whenever they feel like they're hot shit. I love this so much.
Yeah, I honestly can't tell if that's Cecil just bullshitting, but either way, I think it's hilarious.
Well, it's true, but it's like, hey, this might be like you're off to college or whatever, because everyone on the team is so young except for Black Samson, and it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a good time. Rex is talking about how he can bang everybody now that he's in the Guardians, which that's cool. You don't hear that in the Justice League. The closest we get to that is Johnny Storm in the Fantastic Four in the early movies, where he's basically just using it for the fame aspect, and it shows a realism, because you can totally see someone wanting the fame of being in the Justice League, even if they're doing good. Oh
yeah, and that's something that I feel like is going to be a recurring theme in this series. You're going to see everyone's very, their perspective is unique, their approach to being a superhero is completely different, and how they determine what to do is completely different. And Rex, let's just say Rex isn't going to be the only one with questionable morals.
Yeah, and Marvel might have the rights to ego, but that doesn't stop there from being plenty of gigantic egos in this planet-sized egos, if you will, in Invincible.
Oh yeah, lots of people are trying to fight each other and trying to prove who's the best, who's number one, who's strongest, who deserves to be on the team,
whose worldview is the right one. It's good stuff. Yeah.
And it's funny because strength kind of factors into that. When you've got someone like Omni-Man, you can't really, provoke a conversation.
No, either your negotiating skills, you don't have a lot of leverage there when Omni-Man is Omni-Man and you can make stuff explode, but you're not the most durable. Yeah, the Vulcan nerf pinch actually happens after Cecil's appearance, but I just got ahead of myself because I like a good old Vulcan nerf pinch. Again, that is a very much the Kirk and Spock dynamic. If this was like Mirror Universe Spock, all Robot needs is a goatee at this point with the stuff he's up to.
Robot's an interesting fellow for sure, and people, I don't want anyone to jump to conclusions just yet. Just keep an eye out and watch Robot and just see how things develop.
Yeah. So Nolan and Debbie, they get into another argument at the Grayson household, and Cecil's been busy, and he shows up here. You don't even see him, but if you're Omni-Man, you can sense his presence or maybe hear the teleportation or whatever he does, and he almost kills Cecil. He's on high alert, and he's really testy.
The conversation was interesting because we see Nolan just trying to force a solution or just trying to, end the conversation any way possible. But I'm very intrigued with Debbie's reaction. It's just like a woman who wants to not just be swayed off her feet by a superhero, but who wants to actually have responsibility and, fulfill herself with some sort of career or whatever. And you know what I mean? It's not just for show. And I like that she holds her ground. And yeah, with Cecil, it just... Cecil's lucky, and one thing I find hilarious about the animated series that in the comics, Cecil would joke about using the teleportation device, but would often use it frequently. But here, he's not even joking about it. Just taxpayers' money up the ass all the time, like straight up.
I'm still waiting for that line. I'm still waiting for him and Mark to talk about it and that to come out. I think it might still happen, but maybe that might just be a comic exclusive joke. But I love it that it does. I think it costs like $5 million per use. So
yeah,
Cecil and them get into it. Debbie's a career woman now. In the comic, she didn't really have a career, and now she's got a career path. She's the breadwinner. Presumably, she's the reason they have the nicer house that they have than in the comic. It's Omni-Man who's the breadwinner in the show. In the comic, I mean, and he writes all these books, but that hasn't been mentioned at all. I don't think he does that. I think he's just a superhero in this. It might drop the books completely.
I remember they didn't mention the books thing until later on into the series, like at least I feel like 10 or 12 issues in, so it might just be a matter of time. Maybe they'll mention it later on, but we never know. They may not.
True. Mark drops Amber off at home after their date. At first, I thought that they were going to the Grayson home, and I was like, "Oh, shit's about to go down." Amber's going to see Cecil and Omni-Man arguing and really, get tipped off. But no, he just drops her off at her house.
Yeah, it was a nice little scene. I like the very natural, way he just flies off all jolly. Even like there's a very happy,
music.
Yeah, the music and just the way he takes off. You could tell he's delighted, and I enjoyed that. It was a little cute scene.
Yeah, they really capture that teenage romance and the elation and the recklessness. He's flying up in the air like he's literally flying.
Yep.
It's nice. And the more I see of this version of Amber, the more I like her. Zazie Beetz is really charming, and it's hard not to enjoy her performance.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Zazie Beetz from a number of different things. Most recently, Atlanta. I think her performance on that show is incredible. Yeah, just to have her on the show is always a delight, and I could just tell it's her. Even just the voice acting is so good. It's right away. You just know, and without even looking. But one thing I really liked about this transition from Mark coming to drop off Amber and then Mark getting back home is that this is your insight. It's like a very Peter Parker moment where you got this guy who's just, just trying to be a kid, trying to like do his thing, trying to live life. He's a bit shy and awkward. And then he gets home and it's like, boom, you got to go on a space mission.
Yeah, exactly. Mark gets home, and Cecil wants Nolan to go on an escort mission. Those always suck if we play video games. Those are never the best.
Unless you played Final Fantasy VII.
True. Omni-Man doesn't want to go to space, like as per usual. He's got a lot. So Mark steps up to the intergalactic plate and decides to, go to space. He's done it before, but I love how Omni-Man just says, "That was the moon, Mark. That hardly counts as space."
Yeah, Omni-Man's such a cheeky bastard. I'm not even gonna lie about it. He's got those like zingy one-line burns.
It works. It's just great. But also, now that I think about it, I didn't put too much thought into it. But for someone that's come from, as far away as he had in space, that is nothing. That's like saying like going from New York to the next state over or whatever, and then going to like Europe. It's a big change. So I don't know. I like it. It's funny, and there's a bit of perspective on just how well traveled Omni-Man is.
Oh yeah. One thing I appreciate about this scene is that Debbie, who seems to be very level-headed, rather than impose her views and her, what she believes onto Mark, she puts her foot down and, just straight up tells Mark to make his own choice. And I kind of appreciated that.
Yeah, she drops some like Uncle Ben levels of wisdom right here, saying like lots of people are going to tell you how to use your powers, but it's up to you to decide what kind of hero you want to be, which is nice because Cecil is one of those guys that's going to be saying here's how to use your powers. You do this, help the GDA, the world needs you, and even things like Omni-Man is telling you how to use your powers. It could go both ways. You don't know because she's suspicious of Omni-Man. So it's a speech that's both powerful in what she's trying to convey on the surface, and deep down it also works.
We cut to yet another scene where Cecil's using the teleportation device, and he goes back to, I believe it's the house across the street where
it's like a dummy house across the street.
Where we see them monitoring Mark using Predator heat vision, and and it's a little bit creepy, but it gives you more insights into what kind of character Cecil is and how close to the chest he keeps these heroes.
Yeah, and Cecil's saying he's trying to see if Mark's really a good guy or not, because if you're concerned about Omni-Man, you gotta hope that the sins of the father don't drip down into the son, and that his teachings, or he doesn't know what Mark's moral compass is. So you have to hope that they're different enough that even if Omni-Man goes bad, that you still have one Viltrumite on your side.
Yeah, and then we cut to a scene where Mark is talking to Adam Eve about just life and school and everything, and we get the first interaction, and this was a cool interaction because I missed it in the comics. I missed that. I enjoyed it. It's the one where she just basically tells him that she could do more and that she feels like school isn't really the right path for her.
Yeah, you think about it. You don't think about that element of your superpower. Of course, I'm going to be a superhero. What other dreams might I have? Those have to fall by the wayside because I have this. It's like, no, maybe you want to be a writer or you want to be an architect. It doesn't. You don't have to go out and save people necessarily. There's other things you can do to improve society than save people from burning buildings.
Yeah, and I really respect that about Adam Eve, and that just shows you how unique that this series is. Most like Marvel or DC Comics, they just have superheroes being superheroes and following a very black and white moral compass. But here you have a character like Adam Eve who's just even looking for an entirely new way to use her powers to benefit the world, and it's not often that you see a hero like that. You know what I mean?
It's cool to see. It's a different dynamic.
It's very mature as well for someone of that age.
Oh yeah, Eve is one of the most mature high schoolers in many ways. Not necessarily in she's kind of snarky on like the dating life and stuff like that, but as far as like ambition and the superhero thing, she's incredibly mature. It's
cool because right after this scene we get one of my favorite scenes of the whole episode, if not my favorite scene, and it's it's Mark showing up with a ball.
Yeah.
But the best part is the best part about this scene is the charming Peter Parker-esque, again, the tension going on with him having to come and give her, a heartfelt goodbye while also having a very strict time constraint and having to get on the rocket that she's literally watching on TV.
Yeah, exactly. He says that he's going to go volunteer, presumably overseas or in another country. He gives her the ball, which is, a good thing to say a goodbye with. And even Amber says that he's earned at least 2 weeks of interest with that gift. And he catches up to the ship there. He puts his helmet on and tucks on the side of the ship. Major Infinity War Spider-Man vibes with tucking onto the ship, too.
I just love how often if any of the listeners have ever seen Batman the Animated Series, from the 90s, or even Superman the Animated Series, that often these characters would have certain episodes where they would go into space or, Arctic regions or something like that, and they would have like a costume for the occasion. And while Invincible doesn't have a new costume per se, I just love the tiny addition of the mask and the breather and the tank behind him. It looks very good. It makes sense. It's plausible. I like, the aesthetic of the space gear and the space ship and everything. I just think it's very well done, very believable.
It's simple, it's not overdone, and it's just what he needs to be able to survive the long journey. As he's taking off, he still has Cecil in his ear, and he warns them about Martians, which Mark hadn't even considered, even though one of the superheroes on Earth was, Martian Man. So you'd think that would be a factor. And Cecil says that's not even what you have to worry about. The big concern is making sure everyone gets home safe.
One of my favorite moments in the episode is right after, they pass by the large, I believe it was a satellite, or it was like, one of those space stations, but they pass it and you see Dr. Haynes, I believe it's the physicist from the first episode who got tossed up into the air, and you just see him floating in space. So I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, old biplane getting tossed up into space. When in doubt, throw into space. That seems to be effective, as he's still there four episodes later. Even with the garbage bags, the continuity in the show is so great. Where you get a cool scene of like, oh, Mark's going to space, and then you get the callback of like, oh yeah, this guy, the Vulture, not quite knockoff, but basically the Vulture is still out there in space, dead. So it's nice to see.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really good. I really like these charming references that exist within the universe. And yet another really cool scene that follows is, I think, actually it's part of the first scene, right before the cut passes out. I just think I love, again, and I've brought this up before, but I really appreciate it each time because it really adds to the human element of the story. I love how Mark is always in awe. Like, he's been in space before, that one time he jumped up to test his limit, and this is not his first time in space. He's fought Alan the alien, but he still takes a pause to appreciate the beauty, and I just love that about him.
Yeah, it's nice to take a second to smell the roses and take a view at something he doesn't know he's ever going to see again. He could be back on Earth. He doesn't know how many more intergalactic missions are in the cards for him. So It was cool.
And another one of my favorite scenes in this episode is the one where, and he had another breathtaking moment. Mark is sitting enjoying the view. He gets his first sight of Mars, and in his excitement, he realizes that he has a sandwich packed from his mom. So he pulls it out and he tries to eat it, and it does not go well because of space.
Yeah, just the sandwich in the plastic bag. I really like the imagery and the idea of just, I'm gonna have all the space you're on and a plastic bag and a sandwich. What could go wrong? And he tries to bite it, and it breaks into like a bunch of chunks there because of the gravity, not the gravity, but the just space and the effect that it has on normal stuff. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah, it just basically like freezes and becomes rock solid.
The guy's got to be starving on this mission. Like he hasn't eaten in like 2 weeks or something.
Oh yeah. So we get there, we get to Mars, and he just sits there. The first thing he notices yet another teenage moment. He pulls out his phone to perhaps text Amber or something, and he realizes that his battery's dead because it took so long to get to Mars.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're past the age of printing out photos, but that would have been way more effective than a cell phone. We all know these cell phone batteries, results may vary. They're pretty bad. So, I don't know if he was trying to text or not, but he was definitely reminiscent about Amber. He's definitely got some feels for her, so he's looking at that. It's the one thing he has to remind him of home. How isolating is that? You spent however long on the way there, presumably like a week, 5 days. I don't know how fast this ship travels. It's a 2-week mission. You're all by yourself. You're isolated. You've got nothing. You got no phone. He doesn't have books. Like he's sitting there doing nothing alone with your thoughts. So yeah, I would be looking at my phone too if I was in his position.
It's cool to see that, that's the first thing he thinks of on a mission abroad. It's just interesting, and it's very relatable.
I gotta say, the GDA has got some good tech when it can reach all the way to Mars and still contact Mars. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I thought that was a little pickle, but we'll just we'll gloss over it.
I can let that slide when the rest of the story and the dialogue and the characters are so good. I can let little things like that slide. And you can just say he's got like a bug on the ship or something that can like connect the two, or who knows what. Whatever. I'll allow it.
Oh yeah.
We cut back to Earth and see Debbie and Nolan having yet another fight, and Debbie reveals that she thinks Nolan's hiding something from her, which makes sense.
Yeah, and Nolan, of course, wants to douse the fires of that suspicion, and does so by suggesting that they go take a break somewhere by getting some lunch and, having a vacation.
Yeah, Nolan lies super well. Like his lie about he's trying to make sure that Mark is well trained so that nothing happens to him, like what happens with the Guardians. It's clever. Like he's a really good liar and tells convincing enough lies that are rooted in some element of truth. It makes for an intriguing storyline when we know that he's up to no good, but we don't know why or what his end game is.
It's funny to see him in Rome with Debbie, just walking the streets. As they decide to take their vacation, they're about to, go have a seat at the lunch, which they do. Next thing you know, there's a big ass, just monster just tearing the city apart. And Debbie's freaking out, and she's just begging Omni-Man to do something. She's just like, Nolan, why don't you do something? And he just looks at her straight, and he's just like, I'm on vacation.
Yeah, he's just like, hey, the GDA will take care of it. What else do we pay him for? You know, that's our tax dollars at work or whatever. And he lets Cecil earn his paycheck is what he says. And Superman, this is not just sitting there. You know that he cares exactly about what's at the table. He doesn't really care about what buildings are destroyed or what people died that aren't, in his immediate family, basically.
Nope. And it really, all these little moments begin to give you more and more insights about his view on the human race and his connection to them. There are always these little crumbs every episode where they show you more and more how he feels towards his family and how that changes towards other human beings.
Yeah, Nolan and Debbie, when they're on their date, he mentions that, their first date was only a few years ago, and Debbie corrects him and says that it was 20 years ago. It just shows how the passage of time for Omni-Man is so different, just based on time, how differently they perceive things, let alone based on their completely, possibly different worldviews, granted, because Omni-Man grew up on an entirely different world. So it just shows how different they are, and also reveals just how Omni-Man, who knows how old he is. It hasn't been revealed in the show, where 20 years is a few years just to him.
We cut to the next scene, which is, we go to the home of the Graysons, where the Graysons are not present because they're vacationing, except for Mark, of course, who's in a different kind of vacation altogether. We see Darkblood just going through their things, going through their clothes, their drawers, their rooms, their personal belongings, and just trying to gain any kind of evidence he can. And this part shocks me, is that we've gotten so many live action Batman movies, and we've only seen him do this like in one of them maybe once.
I know.
Yeah,
Damien
so
Darkblood.
Yep.
He's more of a detective than we see Batman in a lot of movies. I'm hoping that the Pattinson one changes that. But you're right. When the Graysons are away, the Darkbloods play as Quadruple D is looking for some evidence around the house, and he lingers in the closet. I don't know. We're going to talk about the end of the episode probably right here, where they zoom in on the closet and you can still hear his voice at the end of the episode. So he must leave like a fragment of his soul behind or something.
I was confused about what happened in that closet, and I'm very curious in the next episode if they, bring it back up, or if we get a mention back to it, because that was a very interesting scene. If anyone knows what might have happened, let us know.
So Damien, when he's in the closet, he hears something, and he goes downstairs and he sees Cecil waiting for him. At this point, Cecil's gotten the jump on like 10 people in 3 episodes or 4 episodes. It's crazy.
Yeah, Cecil's showing up in his. He's showing up as Father Cecil this time because he's trying to purge the hell out of this demon.
Yeah, exactly. He's a constant Cecil, constant pain in the ass here.
It was brutal. I mean, he just threatens the hell out of Darkblood in that scene. And, he leaves viewers on their toes, because in the 1 second you see Darkblood get caught up in the moment, guards at hand ready to, shoot him if he does anything. And then it just cuts to Invincible waking up after a nap and realizing that the spacemen are gone.
Yeah, not good. You know that you're hot on someone's trail when you've got like a ton of people pissed off at you. When everyone's pissed off at you, it might be doing something right or incredibly wrong. I don't know. But yeah, Mark, does a rookie move, falls asleep, and notices that the crew is missing, which is, you had one job, dude.
Yeah, and then we get one of the best scenes, in my opinion, of the whole episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. He just feels around, opens a hatch, and boom! Face hugger. No, just kidding. It's a sequid.
Yeah, it's sequid time, and Mark gets attacked by the sequid, and as you mentioned earlier, it's definitely face hugger inspired, stuff like that. But I feel like Kirkman's made them their own when we get their backstory in a couple minutes. So Mark follows the path. He goes underground and he finds more of these tentacle-clad creatures, different size ones all around. And then there's these weird like rock formations on the wall, and they turn out to be, shape-shifting Martians, of course. What else could they be?
Yep. I like the animation design of these Martians. I thought it translated really well onto the small screen. And one thing that delighted me was it's nice to see Mark reason with them. And there was one of the funniest lines where he asked them if they could speak English. They just tell him that they're just speaking Martian.
Yeah, I don't know if they have the telepathy powers of Martian Manhunter, but they speak Martian. They say, which I guess means English. I guess luckily it's like speaking basic in Star Wars, where it's Martian is basically English in this world. I like the line a little bit earlier of like, can you guys keep your dogs on a leash? They are your dogs, right? Or something like along those lines.
I like that part too. I like this whole scene, and we get him. They walk him to the leader. the king or monarch or whatever. And Mark tries to reason his way into getting the troops back, and I don't know if it goes that well.
No, they don't seem like they're up to it. They definitely have a reason to be holding the humans hostage, and it's not out of xenophobia or anything like that. It's literally for the well-being of their entire species and the galaxy at large, because these Sequids are no laughing matter. The crew doesn't recognize Mark, of course, because it's a stealth mission. They didn't even know he came along, but I bet they're happy that he was there. The Emperor gives us the Sequid backstory about how they take over appropriate hosts, and all it takes is one, and they can become unified and nearly unstoppable. The Martians are immune because they've got shape-shifting abilities that make it hard for the facehugger to adapt to the face that they want to hug. It makes them immune. So the Sequids have just kind of been wasting away on that planet, docile with no one to deal with. We see the reason that they hold the humans hostages, because as hostages, it would give the Sequids the exact opening they need to start their evil empire.
I really liked this scene. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was interesting. You know, I've obviously read the comics, so I knew this was coming, but I thought it was really well adapted. And I loved the scene where Mark just realizes, oh snap, I gotta get out of here because there's gonna be no diplomatic way to solve this problem. It was very, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy-esque, that opening scene where they steal, I can't remember what it was, but they steal something from the golden people and they just run away, and it just really reminded me of that scene.
Yeah, they just cut immediately to it. It's like we yada yada over the actual like escape of the Martian compound, and we get to the surface where they're running, and there's like a whole wave of the Martians coming. It'd be cool if they were riding on Bugalo for the Futurama reference, but whatever their mounts was, they seemed like they had to raid a pretty high-level dungeon to get them. They were pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really awesome, really well done scene. And we get another one of my favorite scenes. This is probably my favorite scene, and I know I've said that a few times. This was just hilarious. We get a scene where Mark's trying to hold off the soldiers while the spacemen get back into the vehicle. They're getting ready to take off. They're initiating their the procedure. And he just begins asking them if the engines are on, if everything's on. And then he's just like, they see the windshield crack and they're just like, fuck it, let's go.
Yeah. Oxygen levels, check. Sequid hits the window. Oh, fuck it, let's go. Excellent use of the word fuck in this episode. If there was an Emmy category for best use of swears in a TV show, I'd nominate this episode and it'd be a strong contender. And if that was a category, I'd actually watch the Emmys. But I digress.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. And, we get this really heroic scene from Mark in a spur at the moment, do something you got to do what you got to do. And he just lifts up the ship in a very Superman-esque heroic way and just helps them take off, saves the day.
Yeah, it's not just Neil Armstrong that's eating his heart out. It's Superman, too. Lifting cars is nothing compared to lifting the whole spaceship. It's do or die for Mark. And even just going back to the fuck it of it all, I love how they're just showing how protocol just gets thrown out the window. We don't have time to check engines when it's life or death, literally. Like, space is scary, and like maybe something going wrong with the ship is bad, but what's on the surface right now is way worse, so let's just get the hell out of here.
Yeah, 100%. And, they get the hell out of there. They make their escape, and Mark is on his way home. He's tired. He's beat. He just wants to see a familiar face. He wants to see a familiar planet. He gets to his home door, and he hears some rustling. And, given what's happened recently, it's fair to say that Mark is, his suspicion is warranted. Like, he's right to feel like suspicious at that moment, because it could be someone going after his family. But it's actually something much funnier.
Yeah, it's the horniest parents in comics hooking up once again. But luckily, with super speed, you can cover your tracks pretty quickly. And even though I think Mark, was on to them, they talk it off, and Mark heads upstairs. It's not exactly the best greeting ever. She offers to make him supper or something like that. Debbie does. He's like, oh, there's chicken in the fridge. But no chicken's going to remove that memory. No,
and I feel for Mark. That must be super awkward, especially, just having come back home from his journey. That's the first thing he sees, No, I feel for the poor kid.
Yeah, first people he knows that he's seen in 2 weeks, and that's the welcome that he gets. We forgot to mention that Mark grabs a souvenir before he leaves. He grabs a space rock for Amber to have some sort of souvenir that he can bring back, even if it's just a rock. And she might not realize just how, amazing and priceless that is.
I thought that was hilarious. She's never really gonna know how amazing that rock is. But hey, Mark, I'm sure the effort and as the thought is appreciated.
Amber gives it to Mark at school the next day, and she's excited. She's like a rock, and he talks about how it was during his volunteering over wherever he was. She says that it's a very non-specific story, which it was. Amber is no slouch in the brains department.
No, not at all. And she's delighted just that, just for the thought because it counts. And we cut to Cecil taking Dark Blood into the headquarters, giving him the shit talk, the smackdown, and then he pulls out the Grail.
Yeah, you mean the
little chalice.
Yeah, and then you can see
initiates the ritual.
Yeah, he managed to recreate the Demoness Ex Mortem with his artificial intelligence. I love the fusion of science and mysticism to create this nice little seance or exorcism or whatever it was.
Oh, it is actually a bell. My apologies. Yeah, no, it was really cool. I actually thought the animation was really cool too. It really, like, the scene felt really intense. Everything went all red, and it was really cool looking. And I just loved the pale and blank expression on Cecil's face, as if there's no big deal.
This was a great scene. I love Donald being the one to read the words. That was a nice touch. And we get Cecil's modus operandi right here as he's doing it. He says, "See, that's the problem with demons. You only see good and evil, black and white. Well, I need to keep things gray until I can figure out why Nolan killed the Guardians and how to stop it." I love that. Like, gray, it's not just the color of his hair, it's how he lives his life.
Yeah, and then we get another amazing scene where, Donald is like, gasp! And Cecil is like, "Oh, now you care about a demon? He's not just dead. He's not dead. He's just back in hell." I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, and he's like, "Isn't that worse?" That was great. Yeah, it's cool. It's surreal to see Mr. Krabs get dragged to hell, but I thought it was cool, the chains and stuff like that. It was awesome, and Damien's been to hell before. I don't know. He obviously has managed to make it back before. It could be like in South Park where you can kind of escape hell pretty easily. So who knows?
Yeah, and then we cut back to Debbie, who we see is just cleaning the house all on her own, a house that she's probably getting ready to sell. Because her job is a real estate job.
Yeah, it's Olga's old place.
Oh yeah, she's cleaning Olga's place, and yeah, she realizes the weird thing in the closet where Dark Blood must have left something.
Was that in that closet or was that the Grayson house?
Oh, is that different? Because they do shift the camera to it.
I think it's the Grayson house, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't know.
I'm not sure.
But yeah, they straight up Olga in the late Red rushes home, and he knows something's messed up when it's the late speedster's late, so it's not good.
Yeah, and then we cut back to the final scene of the episode where we get Robot in his lab just looking at a mysterious tank full of liquid and a tiny disfigured and morphed looking baby.
Yeah, it looks to be the result of the Mahler twins' little experiment there, and Robot's obviously got a plan, and who knows what he's going to be doing with it. He's got Rex's blood that he got non-consensually, and really nothing good can come out of that.
No, and yeah, I thought this was a great episode. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was slower than the other ones, but I thought it still was really good, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Crazy that going to Mars, it's like a slower episode when he goes to Mars and comes back within the same episode. But yeah, it was a bit of maybe a slower pace, but I've seen it twice and I wasn't bored at all. It's a really enjoyable show. And also, we mentioned earlier, there's the post-credit scene where they hear Damien in the closet, they hear his voice, and while Debbie and Omni-Man are talking. And that's why I'm pretty sure it's at the Grayson house. We forgot to mention earlier that Cecil was actually he told Debbie, we forgot to mention earlier that Omni-Man told Debbie that Cecil was looking into him as the primary suspect for the Guardians massacre. But at the end of the episode, we hear that he's no longer suspects him, that he's basically been cleared after, they get rid of Damien.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Hey guys, it's Matt and Bash here from the future, and let me tell you, it's way crash over here in 2037. Not just kidding, this is just a few weeks ahead. I just want to give you guys our updated links. You can find the episodes on Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at TheChilltrumites for the latest updates on episodes and the occasional meme. We're also on Instagram at TheChilltrumites. That's basically like the gold mine for memes. All of them are made by me with ideas bounced off Bash, and he recommends the occasional idea. And we post episode links there. So if you want to find us, That's where we're at. And also, we started another podcast on Radiant Black.
Oh yeah, you can find us on Radiant Black at the Radiant Black Podcast. Really, the username is Radiant Black Podcast, but we made it that way so people could find us with the official Radiant Black account. You can also find us on YouTube at the Radiant Black Podcast, on Spotify at the same username, or Podbean.
Thanks for listening, guys. And now on to the spoiler section.
Let's get into the spoiler section now, where we're gonna talk about potential things we think we might see in the next episode.
Yeah, for those that are dropping off the spoiler section, thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, tell a friend. You can find our episodes on Podbean and Spotify, and we're on YouTube as well. On the way to Apple Podcasts, those should be up there pretty soon. If you got any feedback or questions you want read on the show, shoot us an email at TheChilltrumites@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Chilltrumites for the latest memes and episode links, and check out our Instagram as well for memes and other shenanigans.
Yeah, we're quite active. Matt's always posting fantastic memes with Invincible. Very creative ones, actually. I think are hilarious, personally. And kicking off the spoiler section, I think, I don't want to talk about Omni-Man or anything like that because I really want that to build up organically, personally. But if you want to talk about it, go ahead. But one thing I'm personally excited for, and I can't wait, and I thought it was happening this episode, but I guess with the shifting and everything, it might happen the next one or the next two. But I'm excited for them to go to that underwater kingdom and meet the sexual kingfish thing.
Are we still going to go there? I've been on the assumption we might skip over it because it's so silly, but I'd be totally down for it.
I need that scene, man. That whole issue was just one of my favorite issues of the run because it was pure comedic relief.
Aquarius has a family down there that's miserable right now as their tears float to the surface. We got to see what's going on there.
Yeah, it's true. So that's something I hope we get to see soon. And another thing is, in the comic books, Angstrom Levi makes his first appearance in issue number 14, and a lot of the 4 episodes so far have covered the first 12 or so issues. So I'm really wondering if we're going to get an appearance out of Old Man Angstrom soon.
I'm thinking it happens at the end of the episode. At the end of the season, not the episode. I think that when Robot finishes whatever he's doing, with his cloning and whatnot, once he's done that, I think that, that would actually events would definitely have to speed up for the cloning to be done. But either way, the Mauler twins, I think, are going to be free onto another mission. And then I think that Angstrom's going to recruit them, and then we're going to get him in his warehouse building his device.
Angstrom is such an awesome character, and I'm really looking forward to his introduction. It's weird because, Invincible, the issue where they go to Mars, I believe, is in number 30 or something. But yet another issue that I'm looking forward to that I'm hoping will occur in the TV show is the graduation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, this is their senior year at high school. I imagine he's 17, so I assume they'll be graduating sooner rather than later. I know I saw that they're teasing D.A. Sinclair super soon, and he was introduced in the college. So maybe we're going to go check out some universities in the 5th episode.
Yeah, that would be awesome. A really good transition. And another thing that I'm really excited for is, this is something bittersweet. I'm really excited for him to spend more time, learning how to be a superhero with Adam Eve. I'm also on the fence about, Adam Eve taking her small departure for a bit because I really do like her as a character, and I hope she won't be out for too long.
Yeah, there hasn't been too much of her. I'm really liking Adam Eve on the TV show. I'd like to see more of her, but it's just like Alan, right? Where it's we got to wait a little bit. We know we're going to be getting much, much, much more, especially for Eve, going forward. So, I can wait. All good things come to those who wait. There's so much on the plate every week with 45 minutes, 42 minutes. You have to fit everything in. So, yeah, we'll get more Eve eventually.
One thing, I guess we brought it up at the beginning, but I'll say it now. I'm actually excited to see what happens with the pacing regarding the Omni-Man story. I don't want to get into the spoilery aspects of it, but I'm always, every episode, whenever there's a scene with Omni-Man, I'm just so laser point focused trying to, find out what's going on in the scene, is something up? I love that storyline. I can't wait for fans to see what happens.
I love J.K. Simmons in this role, and once shit hits the fan, that's gonna be amazing. You're telling me we get it's very Dragon Ball Z-esque, and seeing J.K. Simmons in that realm is gonna be phenomenal. I can't wait for the real fights. We've seen some stuff, but we're gonna get the real deal soon.
Yeah, I can't wait for J.K. Simmons to go full on J.K. Simmons and go whiplash on Invincible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. And I want to see more of the teen team in action. Like we just kind of saw them a bit. I want to see Eve with the team.
I want to see
them with the
Monster Girl.
Yeah, she's been underserved. She got a couple lines this week, but I want to see Monster Girl unleashed. But they explain why you don't see a lot of her powers being used because it makes her younger each time. So, I hope we get to see more of her. I was reading the comments on Reddit that the reason that it's Seance Dog instead of Science Dog is because of the rights. It's like a totally, technically a separate comic, so there's like different rights. So Kirkman kind of wanted to keep it separate.
Yeah, exactly. He has a Science. I was looking at that today. There's a Science Dog #1.
Which I'm tempted to get. I might have to just to expand my knowledge like Angstrom Levy, but also for this. So
I looked it up today. It was like when I was at the stores, I looked for it. It's so hard to find.
Even the like Guardians of the Globe issues and other spin-off stuff, like Invincible's hard enough to find, let alone spin-offs and stuff like that and tie-ins.
Yeah, it's true.
Also, do you think Eve's dad is going to be as big a piece of shit as he was in the comic?
I'm not entirely sure. He could be. It would be interesting if they did make him a big piece of shit.
Like, that's the point of the character, is he's like the worst dad ever. That just is like so inappropriate and such a prick. Like, at least put him in, like, I'm waiting for that scene with Mark where they have to talk on the deck, which like actually made me laugh. And I was like, I felt like Mark reading it. I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah, no, I can't wait for more. I can't wait for Science Dog to actually show up, like himself.
I know, or it's gonna be Seance Dog, and it's probably next season.
Dr. Seance.
Yeah, where was he when we're getting rid of Damien Darkblood? He should have come and helped with the ritual or undone it or something. Who knows? So yeah, with that, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep, thank you.
We don't know who that is.
It was a secret mission.
Well, you suck at it then.
Mistakes were made, but everything's back on track. So if you don't mind, get out of your hair and maybe keep your little squid dogs under control this time.
The Sequids are the very reason I captured your people. Deep breaths, buddy.